One of the other things that comes up in the book is my mother, Ruth Bellingham's, struggle with Alzheimer's. And that in turn has led me to become a great supporter of the Alzheimer's Society. My mother contracted Alzheimer's when she was in her early 70s, so beginning of the 90s. And very little was known about it, to the point that my father just actually broke down in tears with my sister Barbara when Mum was diagnosed and didn't know where to turn. And I think it's very important for people, and hence my work with Alzheimer's, that it's not regarded but as a mental illness. There's a whole raft of emotions that come out. Anything to do with dementia. Dementia suggests lunacy, suggests Victorian mental asylums, and it's not like that. And in fact, it is an illness, and we fight for this recognition that Alzheimer's is a clinical disease. And it was very heartbreaking, and it is a very, very emotional illness, because not just for the person who has the illness and suffers from it, but for the loved ones, because you lose your loved one very slowly. And it was my mother's, therefore, struggle with Alzheimer's and death, and my father's reactions through all this emotionally, that are very much part of my story and the end of their story. And then, ironically, my birth mother, Marjorie Morehouse, rang me in February 2008 to tell me that she had been diagnosed with the early onset of Alzheimer's. And this was a big shock, in the sense that Alzheimer's can be inherited. And when I'd been dealing with Ruth Bellingham's Alzheimer's, of course, she wasn't my birth mother. There was no blood in the relationship, and I'd sort of dealt with it because I felt distanced from it. Now I was faced with the idea that I too could well end up with Alzheimer's. So my attitude to it sort of changed slightly. But it also, I was very prepared for it. And in fact, I flew to Canada, which is where my birth mother lives, that Christmas. So she called me in October, and I was there by Christmas, because I also knew that you never know which way the disease will take you, and I could well not see her again, partly because of the distance, partly because of my work commitments. And so I flew out Christmas 2008, sort of to say goodbye, really. Since then, in fact, I speak to her regularly, and she still knows who I am, so I haven't had to say goodbye quite yet. But I was very struck all through my mother's illness, Ruth Bellingham, just how painful it can be emotionally. And I want people who read the book, who either have someone they love who's suffering from Alzheimer's, or indeed may have contracted it themselves, to not be frightened by it, to almost embrace it. I mean, until they find a cure, you do have to embrace it. And for the person on the end of it, the partner or the loved one, it's really difficult to look at that person as the person they loved. If somebody dies, you grieve and they're gone. With Alzheimer's, you can be with that person who's gone you've gone from their memory, but physically they're still in front of you, and they're not always the person you knew. But it's an extraordinarily difficult thing to deal with, but I think the more you share these things, the better it is for everyone. So that's very much now, I talk about it in the book, and I want to use the book to get it out there in terms of everybody else.